Nazem Kadri and Jonathan Huberdeau find success on different lines as Yegor Sharangovich is still searching for his game. Hey everyone, welcome into Hot Topics. This episode brought to you by ProStars Plumbing and Heating, Calgary's first choice when it comes to plumbing and heating. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Postmedia Calgary Flames writers Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin. And guys, what a difference a game makes. The Flames with a tough one on the road in Toronto, but the next night with a really strong performance against the New York Rangers. And an interesting wrinkle, Danny, was that Nazem Kadri and Jonathan Huberdeau were put on separate lines, and obviously those two trios found some success. It hasn't been something that Ryan Huska has gone to a lot this year with Kadri and Huberdeau separate, but do you think that he should keep that going for as long as it works?
I mean, extremely small sample size. Let's lead there. But yeah, I mean, I think when you have three lines that are just not producing at all, and if that's an exaggeration, it's only slight. They really haven't been getting anything from anyone, in my opinion, other than those two. And those two, look, against Toronto, there have been a couple games where clearly they have other responsibilities with Michael Backlund gone, and it just hasn't really worked out. So for me, we saw, you need to get Connor Zary going. You need to get Matt Coronado going. We're going to talk about Yegor Sharangovich. I don't know if you're going to get Yegor Sharangovich going, but one way or another, I do think spreading it out. Those two guys have been offensive drivers. I mean, they still only have 50 points. They're not 120-point guys right now. So I don't know that the results have been good enough that you need to keep them together because there's been, absolute magic there. But I do think it makes sense to spread them out because you need more production from guys other than those two.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely probably reached a worth a try point when it comes to, Ryan Huska had done everything to try to get the secondary scoring going, except for split up the two guys that he's told us over and over and over again can't do all the offensive heavy lifting. And so, I think you could make an argument that Huberdeau and Kadri have played sort of as well together as they have at any point as Flames. And so I guess the next step is to find out if that confidence and some of, what they've been accomplishing together, if that means that they can drive separate lines. And yeah, super small sample size, but Kadri had a goal and an assist in New York, certainly not a surprise after he didn't play up to his own standards in his old stomping grounds in Toronto. And then, quite frankly, the fact that Jonathan Huberdeau finished that night without a point is a little hard to wrap your head around. Like, he hit a post, he had several good scoring chances. And so definitely, as Danny said, this isn't about not getting enough out of Huberdeau and Kadri. It's just whether those two guys can give them two strong lines as opposed to one. And, in this wild card fight and knowing that one of the determining factors for the Flames is going to be whether they can score any goals, it's worth a try. I mean, it gives them a better chance at spreading out the offense, and that's certainly something they need.
Yeah, like you guys said, it's a super, super small sample size, but at least the early returns make you feel good that it potentially could be something. So you guys mentioned Yegor Sharangovich, and it's been a bit of a tough season for him, Wes. Just 12 goals this year, coming off a 31-goal campaign last year. He's a guy that in the past has scored 24 goals, so it's in there. What do you think is happening this season with Sharangovich as far as why the numbers are down from maybe some of his previous career highs?
Well, and he scored 31 last year, and now he's on pace for 15. And so, if you made a list of the most disappointing Flames this season, you wouldn't have to think very hard about where you'd be starting. Like, it's been Yegor Sharangovich. As I wrote yesterday, it's not just the fact that the offense has really dried up, and maybe you can explain part of that with starting the season with an injury and getting bounced around through the lineup and back to wing, back to center sort of thing. So maybe you can explain some of the offense. The thing that I think has become more and more apparent as the games get more and more meaningful is that they need some more competitiveness out of Sharangovich. He's not a tough guy by any stretch, but yet to play in the Flames system, you have to win some one-on-one battles. And there's been just way too many occasions of Yegor Sharangovich, first on the forecheck and sort of sweeping at a defenseman and barely shoving him, and then, the puck's gone. They haven't established any zone time. And so, I think there will be a lot of focus on whether he can score more and, whether he can use that great shot of his more often. But it probably just starts with showing a little bit more battle. And, my best guess is that's something that's caused a lot of frustration internally for the Flames because, whether it's an injury or whatever the reason, it just hasn't been there of late.
Yeah, I mean, Wes noted he wrote an article that's going to be better than my answer. I assure you, I'm sort of the Robin to his Batman on this one a little bit. But I will say that, I mean, I do think it's bigger than just can he get going over these last 15 games. If you look at Sharangovich's numbers, they've sort of bounced up and down over his career. And I do think you really have to be worried that after you sign him to a long-term extension last summer, like this can't be who Yegor Sharangovich is. They need him to be better than this going forward. And if they're not going to be bottoming out and getting those top picks, you need guys like Sharangovich to be sort of dynamic offensively. And as Wes said, able to do the work along the boards and retrieve some pucks. So, we've sort of been waiting for those signs of effort, I guess, or those signs of caring, or that's not fair, not signs of caring. We know Yegor cares. But, if this team is going to come out of, the next couple seasons being better than a team that's scraping for its playoff lives at this time every year, then they need Yegor to be better than he's been. So it is an important question.
Lastly, Dustin Wolf, of course, has been such a phenomenal story all season long, guys. We've talked about him being in the Calder Trophy race. The month of February was not particularly kind to him, and the last 3 games here, there's been some up and downs. Dan, he's not close to his career high in games played for a season, even last year, 53 games combined with the AHL and NHL. But could fatigue potentially be an issue at this point, or do you feel with the situation Calgary's in right now, they have no choice but to lean on a guy who's been so consistent for most of the season?
I'm not worried about it even a little bit. I'm going to be honest with you. I think if I did a story during the Four Nations, so if you're one of the many people who didn't read it, my story on Dustin Wolf's development through the years, I spoke to his coaches, and it was actually something that they went out of their way. I didn't even really ask them about, but they wanted me to know that, when this guy was a junior, he was sometimes playing 2-3 games back to back. This is not a guy who fatigue should be an issue, and I think it is smart for the Flames to get Dan Vladar some starts. Maybe Dustin Wolf is going to have to make some adjustments a little bit. It's possible the teams have a lot of tape on him or starting to figure some things out, but I do not believe that fatigue for this kid who has worked so hard and fitness is so important and rest is so important. When you speak to him, you don't get the feeling he's out eating burgers and drinking beers. I think Dustin Wolf will be just fine. Whether that means that every performance is going to be absolutely lights out between now and the end of the season, not necessarily, but I just do not think that the workload, when they've done a very careful job managing it, is going to be an issue. Not at all.
It certainly helps that Dan Vladar has come back from that Four Nations break and given them strong starts when he's been relied on. He was, at least from my vantage point, going into the break, a huge question mark. Could they count on him for quality starts when they need it? And he's shown since the break that they can. I think he has a .927 save percentage in his past 4 starts, which is really impressive for a backup goalie. And so that gives you a little bit of wiggle room if you do worry about fatigue with Dustin Wolf. But I got to be honest, I'd even push back on Wolf having a bit of a down February. He kind of goes as the team goes. And, if they have one of those nights, and they had a couple of them where they give up way too many chances, it's going to impact his numbers. But, I think we could probably count on one hand still the number of kind of questionable goals he's given up this season. I'm sure in his next start after what happened in Toronto, we're going to see a really strong bounce back. And so, of course, sort of managing his workload is going to be important. And yet, let's not kid ourselves. If you're in a wild card spot when the buzzer goes on April 17th, it's because of Dustin Wolf. And so you can't really be worried about rest right now.
And to take that one step further, this team's goal is to make the playoffs, at which point he's got a whole lot more hockey to play. So fatigue shouldn't be an issue. He wants to be starting in big, high-intensity games every single game going forward. So, yeah, we got a long way to go before this guy's complaining about needing a rest.
Absolutely, and as you guys have touched on, they aren't in this position without him. He's been a rock all season long, and we'll see how he fares down the stretch here. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Danny Austin and Wes Gilbertson, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.